Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about Bruce Lee. Now, he's been dead for about 40 years now. I thought it was longer, but that's still a decent amount. And it's very interesting how huge an impact he's had on everyone of all cultures, ethnicities, backgrounds, races. They actually did this whole documentary, and you can see parts of it online on YouTube, where all these different celebrities that have achieved success in their own different fields or skill crafts, like Kobe Bryant and a guy from the Black Eyed Peas, they all came forward to do a segment for this documentary on how Bruce Lee has impacted their lives. In fact, Kobe Bryant, everyone knows him, one of the greatest NBA basketball players of all time, arguably, and he literally admitted that he secretly practiced Bruce Lee's fighting style, Jeet Kune Do, in his free time occasionally, and he had a huge impact on Kobe Bryant when he was young, and a lot of these people did. In fact, according to many big MMA fighters, there isn't a person in MMA and UFC who hasn't been somewhat influenced or inspired to start UFC because of Bruce Lee. I mean, it goes without saying. Even to this day, I ask a lot of people of different age groups, usually around my age especially, they know who Bruce Lee is and they value him so much. And it's not just for his fighting style, but his commitment, his philosophy to life, his acceptance of people outside of his culture, to teaching his martial arts style when that was forbidden at the time, and his work ethic, which was ridiculous, his friendships with Chuck Norris, the movies he's made, the impact he made, the success and wealth he accumulated in the short time that he was alive. It's very shocking and awe-inspiring how short life can be and how out of control it can be. Him dying through a chance allergic reaction. And these things really make you value every second and every day of your life. You don't know how short your life will end, which is a very scary thing to think about. And it really makes you appreciate every second in life. Just how George Lucas, when he was in high school, almost died in a car crash, and it made him really capture every moment of life. And if you study a lot of successful people, that's a common theme. Benjamin Franklin, who accumulated a lot of wealth, made a huge impact, helped with the Declaration of Independence, all this other stuff, invented all this stuff, did a lot of the first experiments on electricity. He was the same way. Him and a lot of our people, to this day, a lot of successful, wealthy people, the thing they value most is not money, but the time they have on this earth, because they know how scarce that is. Whereas money and other stuff can be rejuvenated over time. So back to Bruce Lee, however, let me just I want to throw out some very interesting facts about him that a lot of people don't know, and also just show you how a multi-dimensional character he is, how much of an impact he made. And if he was alive today, he probably would have had a huge impact as well. Probably would have been on a lot of talk shows and stuff. And although we can only speculate, he would have had a much deeper impact on the Asian American culture, and maybe we wouldn't be so. I mean, I don't want to say it like this because then it's kind of it comes from a perspective of like, oh my goodness, what if? And that doesn't really help anyone. It's just like a guy sitting here moaning and wishing the world was a better place. But I do think that he had a huge impact on progressing how Asian Americans are. And although at the time it wasn't perfect, and in certain ways, again, it's just speculation, I do think that if he was still alive, we would have had Asian Americans just naturally a much more masculine view of ourselves. I mean, with Jeremy Lin, it's somewhat back, but with Bruce Lee, like, even back in the day, even now, like if you asked girls, like he was the one go-to figure for a very masculine, muscular, badass Asian American man, and he was sexy, and we never, at least in main pop culture in American society, that hasn't really popped up. And the other, the only other two big ones, Jet Li and Jackie Chan, both of them are nearing retiring age now. They never really fulfilled that completely, and one could argue they only, from what I've studied, from them coming up into the movie industry, those doors were only open because Bruce Lee died. So it's kind of like, well, Jackie Chan and Rush Hour would never have been here if Bruce Lee didn't die. And it's kind of true because, I mean, there's this whole story that Jackie Chan tells about how once Bruce Lee died, all these Asian American film or Asian stars came up with all these similar names: Tom Lee, Bruce Chan, and they all kind of failed because they tried to emulate Bruce. And then Jackie rose to prominence because he accepted his true personality, which was different. He was kind of the humorous dude. But one could argue, like, I mean, yeah, I'm grateful for that, but at the same time, it's like they never really fully, and it's not their fault, but they, because of their lack of their English is not that great. I'm not gonna lie. Like, because how movies are cut and edited, it looks like they have decent English, but honestly, it's very broken. It's very, it's not good native English, and it's, you know, they're not true Americans, and they don't really fully adapt and understand it. And on top of that, there's a lot of stereotype against what that masculine Asian image that Bruce Lee had. And nowadays, I feel like there's been a bit of a pop culture thing towards thinking of Asians as nerds, can't speak English well, very unmasculine and so forth. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it, just like many stereotypes, is partially fueled by the truth of the matter, because there's a huge influx of immigrants that are like that. And I would say that the American film industry has not been so against it, because I've seen films like Jet Li's, I think it was Take Me to the Crib, or other films where they have tried to make Asian American leads this badass character, like The Tuxedo, where he's like the lead role, and he's not portrayed in a funny, weird way. It's really a bit of a serious masculine role, but it was never fully done properly just because of the personality Jackie Chan is. But let me just tell you that Jackie is quite the masculine character back in China. It's kind of how weird it works when you flip it to different cultures and his lack of English. But without further ado, I mean, this kind of just illustrates how things might have been different if Bruce Lee was still around. And again, I'm not moaning or whining or seeking pity or anything. It's just interesting facts. Bruce Lee married a white woman. She was a college student at the time. Bruce Lee was a fairly successful film star already, and he married this white woman. She was technically a college student, quite the babe, and they had two children together. So they were both hybrids, and not a lot of people know this. Maybe it was because it was a time when it was a completely different culture time, and the focus or the impact he made was so centralized on his contribution to film and all these other things, his massive work ethic, his philosophy on martial arts and stuff, and that at the time didn't really bleed through. I think now it would have more if he was still alive, given that he'd probably be pretty old. He would have gone on some mainstream talk shows like Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Ellen, and people would have thought differently about interracial marriage and stuff like that. And not that it matters that much. Another great fact, though, is that he was a exceptional dancer. He was apparently like he won like a huge championship for the Hong Kong tango or salsa dancing competition. And it kind of made sense because the footwork was important in martial arts. And people have different interests. I think there's a huge flaw in thinking that like the craft that made people successful is all that they're interested in. Oftentimes people bleed in other things. Warren Buffett likes to play bridge. Bruce Lee, he liked to dance. It oftentimes isn't as great a time in their lives where they can make money off of it. Just like, although Arnold Schwarzenegger won the Mr. Olympia like 7 times. It's like it was not a time where working out made a lot of money, and so he had to. A lot of people don't know this. He had to think smart and think outside of the box of the other uh, working out buddies of his. And no, he didn't get into film. He chose to get into real estate, and he became a millionaire in real estate. Um, so he didn't have to rely on working out like all his other broke friends did. And then later on, he did get into film, and then Terminator and all that other stuff. But a lot of people don't realize this stuff. Another very interesting, very, very interesting fact about him is his work ethic and friendship with Chuck Norris. Uh, Bruce Lee was a huge film star, and in certain ways propelled Chuck Norris to the fame he has now. Nowadays Chuck Norris has all these jokes about how tough he is, about the boogeyman checks the closet for Chuck Norris, and Chuck Norris doesn't get wet, wet gets Chuck Norris. Stuff, funny jokes like that. And without Bruce, it's kind of interesting how the domino effect and the ripple effect of how people influence other people. But Bruce Lee was this huge film star, at the time, and first he met Chuck Norris, and they struck up a great friendship, and they trained together for many hours every day, in their own homes, oftentimes in the backyard. And Chuck was like the world championship of his craft. I think it was like karate or something else. And Bruce, he was this huge film star at the time. He had made all these box office breaking hits, making millions of dollars in Hong Kong, in Asia, and in the United States as well. And unfortunately, it was a time where things were black and white oftentimes, and everything was dubbed over what he said with like these kind of somewhat racist Asian sounds. And here they are in the backyard every day for many years training, and it was very interesting because they developed this deep friendship, and they never fought each other. They never wanted to go there, but they had this deep friendship. And Bruce Lee's work ethic was ridiculous. He kept a journal where he was like 1,000 punches, literally 1,000 punches right arm, 1,000 punches left arm, Monday, 1,000 kicks, 100, 200 push-ups, all this ridiculous stuff. This horrendous work ethic that was grueling. It reminds me of Will Smith's work ethic. And they're doing this shit, and excuse me for cursing. And finally, they part ways, and then a few years later, Bruce Lee calls up Chuck Norris, and they're like, I've had all these enormous hits. I think it's very successful. I want you to be the star. I want to fight you, the world championship, the world champion in karate, or at a Roman Coliseum. And it's going to be this enormous film. And I want to, and then Chuck it's kind of funny. Chuck is like, well, who wins this fight? And he's like, well, I do. And he's like, oh, so you want to be the world championship? Because Bruce at the time was just a film actor. Like, he was a great fighter and stuff, but he was primarily a film star and director and whatever. But Chuck was an actual fighter by profession. And then Bruce Lee made a quite funny comment. He was like, no, I don't want to beat the world championship. I want to kill the world champion. You can kind of tell how his personality was. He was a very confident, masculine dude. He made his jokes how he wanted to, and he wasn't afraid to back down. And it's a quite contrast to the current stereotypical image of certain Asians. And it's unfortunate how it's sort of backtracked, but I don't think it's completely due to Americans, or I don't want to typecast it like that, but I think, there's a lot of really cool guys of all ethnicities, American, white, black, who really respect Asians, and I mean, it's really where you shine the spotlight. So it's they're really cool guys who are trying to give Asian Americans a chance and really respect them. And it's unfortunately, they're, I guess, due to upbringing and stereotype and just Asian tradition, there are a lot of very anti-masculine Asians. Bruce Lee was not one of them, though. And so it's kind of funny, and then this film became this huge, success, still to this day. Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris scenes, it's got 30 million views on YouTube. And I can go on and on. Now, here's a very interesting fact. I think I should have said this first. It's very interesting. I really hate it when people just leave the video 2 minutes in, because I I always fail to say the like most interesting thing at the start, which I should start doing. But this is like really awesome. Bruce Lee did not have a Asian Fabi accent. I mean, there's this one interview of him on YouTube. It was the one talk show that he did at the time, and his English was on point. He was masculine, and he had like people. That was the biggest shocker to me. His like he had a deeper voice than me, and obviously he was a tough guy, and the way he spoke was his personality was a bit different, but his English was on point. And even for myself, I thought for a long time that he didn't speak English or had really choppy Asian English. But his English was on point. It wasn't American English, it was British English. So he had that sort of British accent to him. But it was on point, and I was just like, wow. And so, like, I do think it's quite astounding, all these things about Bruce Lee. And to this day, things are still coming out. I mean, I really hope that one day someone similar may step up to the plate just to lead by example, because there's people who are like maybe trying to whine about it or complain about it to spread awareness or whatever, but you really got to lead by example, and Jeremy Lin's kind of done it. But that masculine Asian man, it'd be great to see someone like that in like Bruce Lee once again in pop culture. It would help a lot of people out who are just struggling, and it may just start with you. Like, you may not be well known or famous or amazing, but the ripple effect of just in your local community, just breaking that stereotype will do wonders. And there are a lot of people who have that stereotype, and there are others who I respect who they take people at face value first and foremost before any judgments. And so, I mean, I see occasionally there's some badass Asians, and then there's like badass Asians like Kong on YouTube, Simple Pickup. He started from scratch. He built his own image of this masculine Asian self that he wanted to build, just like Jesse did from Simple Pickup as well. He's Indian, and they built up this masculine image. So whatever ethnicity you can do, you can break stereotypes by changing yourself and just breaking the standard. And that's very tough to do sometimes. I know from experience, I being a very shy guy out in public. So you gotta work on it, and we can all do this together. And to this day, there's still a huge influence on Bruce Lee in normal pop culture. For instance, the latest UFC game has Bruce Lee in it, and they literally have like the starting opening scene. They took his stretching routine straight from the movie where he fought Chuck Norris. And also in the latest Avengers 2 movie that's yet to be released, there's a scene where Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey, is wearing a Bruce Lee shirt very eminently, and they kind of like edited it out so that Bruce Lee's wearing like headphones and rocking out and DJing rather than fighting. But the impact is still there, and you still see it. And again, I don't think that everyone's horrible. I mean, there are films, if you take a good look, some quite mainstream, that put Asian Americans or just Asian males in general in masculine roles. Like they tried it with this TV show, Selfie, that just didn't go well. But that was just, I would say it's because of the story and not because of anything else. But that had a leading Asian man as the role. And it starred Karen Gillan of Doctor Who and Guardians of the Galaxy as the leading female role. Unfortunately, that show bombed, but I think it was just a lack of writing, lack of good story, and not complete alignment of what the writers thought pop culture was and how they depicted the character. Like, I'm going off on a tangent, but I mean, if you ever checked out that show, it's kind of cringy, because it's like, that's not really how real girls like that with social media and Instagram really act. So it was kind of off the mark, but if they had hit it on point, I think it would have taken off. And it's not just that, it's like For instance, the show, everyone's seen the Fast and Furious film series, right? Kong in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift plays he plays a huge role in a lot of that. I think his name's Sean Kong, Sung Kong. I'm probably butchering his name, but he plays a very masculine role in a lot of those films. And I think in Fast Five, he gets the girl. It's interesting because you see like the black guy in the film like try and get the girl, and like another guy try and get the girl, and at the end of the day, the guy who gets the girl is the Asian guy, and they ride off into the sunset on like a really fast sports car, and she's like making out with him while he's riding it. So it's not a complete loss. There are people trying to bring it out, and I think it's really cool. And yes, it's really interesting seeing all that. And this isn't just any girl. The girl that he rode off with in this film, she's now Wonder Woman in the upcoming Batman vs Superman film, which is going to be a huge hit. I think I'm going to watch it, and it's all very interesting. And last but not least, I'm very excited. I think I'm very excited to see what the future holds for all this, and you can make the difference. And again, this isn't just something for Asian people. Whatever ethnicity or group or stereotype you're into, it's kind of like, I mean, sure, you can hope and do things, but try everything you can to break stereotypes. And sometimes, sometimes you can't just wait until your life ends or for some hero to come out and change things. You kind of have to work on it yourself and realize, hey, maybe things aren't going to happen in my lifetime to change it drastically. Maybe I gotta do something. Maybe in just my local community, I just have to be the person I want to be, that people want, that people don't think I am, to break that stereotype and show them who I truly am, to show that there are masculine or awesome or badass Asians out there. It's not, you can't just sit there and moan and whine and say, well, because society has pigeonholed me and said this class of person can't be this type, whether it's whatever, sexuality or race or whatever. I'm just going to throw my hands up and do nothing. It's like, if you want to be a badass person, be a badass person. If you can't, then maybe you're not a badass person and you conform to the stereotype. Work on changing that. Hopefully this video helped and inspired and motivated some of you guys to do something about this. I'm still working on myself, trying to change that thing. For sure, I'm so far from where I want to be. Still trying to grow and get there and break free from my shell or shyness or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's all I really want to say. And I'm just very interested. I'm just very excited seeing Robert Downey Jr. with that shirt on in